Alright, today let's talk about thesis statements. We really need to talk about how to narrow them down and focus them so that there's something that's useful and attainable in just 3.5 pages and no more. So remember that this first essay is very short. E1 is very short, no more than 3.5 pages. So you really need to focus your thesis statement down into something that you can get into a lot of depth in a short amount of time. The real key for any essay that you're going to write in this class or in other classes is to tell me in depth what you know about a topic and persuade me in depth. So unique is important, an interesting angle is important, and depth is important. If your thesis statement is too broad, your main points are going to be huge, and when you hit that 3.5 page cutoff or whatever the cutoff is, you're going to end up with just a little bit of information when you could have maybe narrowed it down and focused it and had a lot of information that was really persuasive about a smaller topic. So that's why we spend so much time narrowing your focus. That's why we're going to spend this amount of time talking about your thesis statements and making them narrow and focused. Every single thesis statement you ever write for anything should be narrow and focused. It's just more persuasive that way. It's more useful for your readers. So here's a sample thesis statement that I've started out with. Kids should be taught how to grow vegetables and cook healthy meals in school. This is a start, but it still needs some work. It's not very narrow, it's not very specific, and it's not really all that of an interesting angle on this topic. So it needs a little bit more. Here is what it needs. So you've looked at the thesis statement video, hopefully, and you know that all thesis statements need context, needs a subject, and it needs a claim. Claim is also called reasoning. So this thesis statement, as it is, doesn't have a context, kind of has a subject, has no reasoning. So we need to get more into that. So as I've been brainstorming, I'm trying to think about why. Why should kids be taught how to grow vegetables and cook healthy meals in school? That's your reasoning. So I'm kind of starting in the middle or at the end of this thing, and I'm going to work backwards. So I think that kids need to know these things so that they understand just how they get their food and their meals. We're not there yet with that one either, but we'll come back to that. That's kind of a start. So they need to know how to understand. So now about the subject, just taught how to grow vegetables and cook healthy meals. That seems a little bit vague and it seems a little bit small. I'm thinking our subject should be something a little bit more, a little bit broader, a little bit more complex. So what if instead of saying just taught how to grow vegetables, cook healthy meals, we said something about kids should be required to take ag classes. They need to be enrolled in an agriculture studies program, or that should be one of the core subjects. So we've got kind of, again, this is not quite there. We'll need to come back, but we've got to start. We also need a context. Why? So your context can be two things. It can be a place and time, something like in today's digital age, or in Illinois in 2017, or something like that, as long as it's kind of a place and a time. Those are kind of generic, but sometimes they're really useful, and sometimes they're the necessary context, so choose wisely. The other option is a kind of like the opposition point or a because statement, giving context about the topic that's not just a place and a time. I think that's the one that we need. We need to say maybe, why is this so important? That's going to be our context. Why is this topic something that we should be talking about? So I'm thinking something like this. So why is this important? Because a lot of Americans don't know where their food comes from. They're becoming less and less aware of the growing process and how that food ends up at their supermarket where they buy it to put it on their tables. So we've got a context, we've got a subject, we've got a claim. Now we still need some work on these things because ultimately this is all going to go into one single sentence. So I'm thinking that I feel pretty good about our context. It could use a little wordsmithing, but we'll get there later when we're drafting. So this is the beginning of our thesis. So we've got that context. Now let's work on our subject. This word kids, it's just a little too generic. Who are we really talking about? I think we're talking about all maybe elementary students. All of elementary school students from across the country. And then we're saying and because not everybody's going to know what ag means, we're going to just say agriculture so that it's more clear and, that kind of professional language. So we've got our context, we've got our subject. Now we need the rest of it, the reasoning. So we're saying basically that kids need to understand how they get their food and their meals. But we don't want to make it so specific to just single people, single kids, or, the word they gets a little vague. I think we want to make that more specific. So here's what I've come up with. So yes, we still have a they, but really we're talking about U.S. food supply to all American citizens. So here's a thesis statement. Now we've taken it from kids should be taught how to grow vegetables and cook healthy meals in school. We've done a little bit more brainstorming. We've come up with a thesis statement that is narrow, focused, logical, and easy to follow. And this is going to give us a really good basic starting point for the premise of our paper. So let's take this and translate it into an outline. This outline